air in 1893 because on a burning stretch of the Santa Fe Trail near the Arkansas River, a young nun was hanging from a tree, her wrists tied high above her head, her ankles tied to two separate ropes pulled wide apart, her boots kicking at empty air. Sister Eliza Byrne was only 22, and she had already run from the church she once trusted. But the truth was quieter and more dangerous because she didn't trust the church anymore. She was running toward herself. Her habit was torn at the sleeves, her arms numb, her throat raw from begging no one was meant to hear. She still wore the habit. Not for the church, but because it was the only thing she had left. The road was empty. No wagons, no riders, except one far-off silhouette, watching, then riding on. Only cicadas screaming in the heat. And if you think that's the worst thing that happens to a runaway nun out here, you're wrong. Then a horse slowed. Leather creaked. Boots hit the ground. Caleb Hart, a 48-year-old rancher with dust on his hat and scars in his eyes, saw the ropes first. Then he saw the girl, not a sinner, not a symbol. A woman tied up and left like prey. He didn't ask questions. He climbed the trunk, cut the ropes, and caught her as her weight fell forward. That catch saved her life and almost ruined his. In that split second, his hand slipped where it never should have been. Not from desire, from instinct, from saving her, from hitting the ground. Eliza gasped. Her breath broke. Her body reacted before her faith could stop it. She pulled back just enough to whisper, her voice shaking with shame and something far worse. "Your hands." That was wrong. Her eyes didn't agree. She swallowed hard and looked away fast, like she could hide her face from God and from herself. But her cheeks stayed hot anyway. Caleb froze. He stepped back so fast he nearly stumbled. He pulled his hands up where she could see them, like a man showing he meant no harm. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice came out rough. But the damage was already done, not to her body, to her certainty, and Caleb knew it too. One wrong second could follow a man for the rest of his life, because Eliza knew then that Silas Crow had not been the most terrifying thing she would face. The real terror was realizing she couldn't go back to feeling nothing. And somewhere between the dust, the ropes on the ground, and the man who saved her without taking anything, Eliza Byrne took her first step away from the church. But the road ahead was not mercy, it was consequence, and the rancher who cut her down was about to face something far worse than guilt. Stay with this story, because what followed that moment beneath the tree would change both of them forever. Caleb kept his eyes on the trail, not on her, like looking too long might make the whole thing worse. Eliza sat side-saddle behind him, one hand gripping the saddle horn and the other pressed to her own wrist where the rope had cut deep. They rode in the thick Kansas heat until the cottonwoods thinned and the land opened up. A low ranch house came into view, sun-bleached boards and a small corral, a water trough that looked like heaven itself. Caleb helped her down without touching more than he had to. He handed her a tin cup and said, "Drink slow. You passed out on me, and I don't feel like carrying you twice in one day." It was the first thing that almost made her smile. Inside, the place smelled like coffee, leather, and horses. No fancy talk, no church hush, just real life. Caleb found a clean rag, poured water over it, and held it out. "Show me your wrists." She held them out. He wrapped them gently and tied the cloth, the way a man ties a gate latch, firm but careful. "You got a name?" Caleb asked, then added, "Besides Sister Eliza," she said. "Eliza," he repeated, like he was trying it on for size. Then he cleared his throat. "I didn't mean to, back there." "I know," she said too fast. She sat at his kitchen table and stared at her hands, like they belonged to somebody else. Caleb put a plate in front of her. Beans and bread, nothing holy, just food. "Eat," he said. Eliza took a bite and felt her throat tighten. Not because it tasted good, because nobody had told her she could simply eat without earning it. When she finally spoke, it came out messy. She told him she left the church outside Wichita, not because she stopped believing, but because she couldn't breathe in there anymore. She said there were things she saw, things people pretended not to see. And she wasn't built for pretending. Then she stopped talking and watched his hands, like she was still deciding if she could trust him. She had joined a wagon train headed toward Dodge City, thinking she could disappear into the wide world. They camped near the river, and in the heat she walked off for water. The train moved on without her, just dust and distance. By the time she ran back, all she saw was the last wagon shrinking into the prairie. Then Silas Crow stepped out of the brush like a bad thought. You can't shake. Caleb's jaw tightened at the name. I've heard of him, he said. Men like that don't stop at one bad act. He's coming back, Eliza said. Caleb walked to the window and looked out at the open land, like he could already see a man riding toward them. You're safe here tonight, he said. As safe as I can make you? Eliza nodded, but her stomach sank, because she remembered Silas's smile, and she remembered the way he said he liked women who belonged to God. Because it made breaking them feel like a game. Caleb turned from the window, and his voice went flat. Finish your food, Eliza. Then tell me everything, he said, because out on that trail, Caleb had cut her down. Now he was about to decide what to do with the man who put her up there. Eliza told Caleb what Silas had said, and she hated that her voice shook on the worst parts, not because she was weak, because she was tired of being scared. She described the way Silas smiled first, like he was friendly, like he was just another traveler. Then she described the way his eyes changed when he noticed her habit. He didn't just want her money, he wanted her shame. He wanted a story he could drag into town and sell for laughs. Caleb listened without interrupting, but his face got still, the kind of still that meant something inside him had already stood up. When she finished, he nodded once and said, All right, 2 words, but they felt like a door locking. Caleb had lived long enough out here to learn one rule. If you let a bully write the story, you spend years cleaning up the ending. He went outside and checked the corral gate, then the window latches, then the barn. He listened for hoofbeats, not frantic, just steady. Eliza watched from the doorway, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold. You got a rifle? She asked. Caleb glanced over. Sure. Are you going to use it? He shook his head. Only if I have to. Then he added, Silas likes easy targets. He won't find one here. Eliza tried to laugh, but it came out thin. You don't even know me. Caleb looked at her like she'd said something strange. I know enough. I lost my wife to fever 10 years back. I've seen what happens when good folks look the other way. I'm not doing that again. You were tied up in a tree. You didn't do that to yourself. They sat at the kitchen table again, the lamp lit low, the summer night pressing against the windows, crickets outside, a lonely owl somewhere near the river. The house smelled like coffee and sun-baked wood. Eliza's wrists throbbed under the cloth wraps. Caleb poured water into a basin and set it in front of her. Wash up, he said. Nobody sleeps good covered in trail dust. She washed her face and stared at her reflection in the dark glass. A nun. A runaway. A woman who had felt a forbidden spark and didn't know what to do with it. Behind her, Caleb cleared his throat. You can take the bed, and you... I'll take the chair. He said it like it was no big deal, but Eliza noticed he kept his boots on, like he planned to be awake if the night turned ugly. She lay down, fully dressed, hands folded over her stomach like she still belonged to the church. But her mind didn't belong to the church anymore. It kept replaying the moment under the tree. The sudden heat in her cheeks, the way her heart had jumped like it recognized life. Just before she drifted, she heard Caleb speak softly from the other room. Not to her, exactly. More like to the dark. Come on, Silas, he whispered. Make your mistake. And that was when Eliza realized something that scared her even more than Silas. Caleb wasn't just protecting her. He was waiting for a fight. If you're enjoying this story so far, go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps more than you'd think. Now take a sip of your tea, settle in, and tell me this. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you listening from? Because the next sound that rolled across Caleb's ranch wasn't an owl, it was a horse. And whoever wrote it wanted Caleb to know he wasn't alone out there. The hoofbeats stayed slow, like whoever was out there wanted to be heard. Not rushed, not nervous, just confident. Caleb didn't reach for the rifle on the wall. He reached for his hat. That told Eliza everything she needed to know. This wasn't a scared man guarding a house. This was a rancher, stepping out to handle business. Eliza slipped off the bed and padded to the hallway, careful with her sore wrists. Caleb held up one finger, a quiet signal to stay back, but Eliza had spent too many years obeying people who didn't deserve it, so she stayed close enough to hear. Caleb opened the door, and the night air poured in, warm and dusty, carrying that river smell from the Arkansas. Moonlight laid silver on the fence rails, and there he was, Silas Crow, sitting on his horse like he had all the time in the world. A revolver sat low on his hip, and his hand rested close to it like a habit, out past the fence line. A second horse stood in the dark. Rider or no rider, it was hard to tell. He tipped his hat with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Evening, Hart." Caleb's voice stayed calm. "That depends on why you're here." Silas clicked his tongue, like he was talking to a stubborn mule. "I lost something today." His thumb brushed the leather near his revolver. Not pulling it, just reminding Caleb it existed. Caleb didn't blink. "Try looking under the tree where you left her." Silas chuckled, soft and ugly. "Now that's the problem, isn't it? I don't like losing." His eyes slid past Caleb, searching for Eliza in the shadows. Then he smiled wider. "Funny thing about Dodge City, folks love a good story. A man alone with a young nun, out here on the riverland. People will talk, and talk turns mean real fast." Eliza felt her stomach twist. So this was his plan, not just to take her back, but to ruin them both with words. Caleb stepped down onto the porch, boots steady on the boards.